Scott Prevost, and I'm here today with Mark White, a man who has legally died on 3 separate occasions and has had multiple near-death experiences. Now, he's here with us today to share his story, and not only to share his story, but to spread his faith, especially to those who've questioned their faith, because, personally, I've been there before, and I can confidently say now that after hearing Mark's story, I have faith. So, Mark, let me ask you this. Starting at an early age, throughout your life, would you have considered yourself to be religious?
Yes, I was raised in a Baptist home. We attended church occasionally on Sundays.
Okay. Now, if there was, a certain time in your life where there was a disconnect with God, a certain specific time or some moment that happened?
Later on in my life, I started having some health problems.
Okay.
And then I was diagnosed having MS.
Wow.
And was informed by my doctor within a year I'd be put in a wheelchair.
And how bad did it get?
At one point, after I'd started the treatments, I was on injections of Rebif on a daily basis. And he started putting me on muscle relaxers and had to continuously up my dosage because they wasn't working. I got all the way to 7,800 milligrams of muscle relaxers a day, and the doctor said at that point it was time to put a pump in to continuously feed muscle relaxers to me, on top of also wanting to prescribe me with methadone. And when I heard methadone, having a background in law enforcement, it scared me because I know what that stuff is like.
Right.
In fact, they use it to treat people for heroin addiction.
Wow.
And I told him I needed to think about it. And that's when I went home and talked to my wife, and I finally said, fuck it. I quit taking all the medications I was on and prescribed at that point, which turns out a good thing. Later on, I found out that the diagnosis of MS was wrong.
How long was that before you found out?
I think I was on treatments for a total of 4 years.
Wow.
And the injections I was on was the cause of all the muscle pain and stiffness. That's why they was prescribing the muscle relaxers.
Right, and that's not where that's not where it stops though, right?
No, it turns out through some more testing, they said, well, Mr. White, we're sorry, but you've never had MS. In fact, through the blood work, we've determined that you have a form of leukemia, and you need to start treatment for that.
Wow.
And that's when I was sent to an oncologist, and they started me treatment for having leukemia.
Really? And what would that involve?
At first, it was just a form of bloodletting,
Okay.
where they drain out a jug of blood,
Mm-hmm.
basically, from me. And they did that. That went on for 2 years. The doctor determined that it wasn't working, wasn't helping, and he wanted to refer me to a thoracic surgeon to remove some of the lymph nodes out of my chest to find out what type of radiation and chemo they should use on me.
And what was their conclusion?
I ended up going to the thoracic surgeon, and that's when he told me that he couldn't do the removal of the lymph nodes because I needed pretty much emergency surgery on my heart.
Really?
Yeah. So I went from the MS diagnosis and going through the treatment for that into that was wrong and you have cancer, and treated for that, and then go from that, had to go to the surgeon and found out on top of, cancer diagnosis that I had to have heart surgery. My heart was at I think they said 35% on my aortic root, and my mitral valve was only working at 65% or something in that area.
So you had leukemia?
Yes, at that point they still was treating me for the leukemia.
Wow. And that wasn't a misdiagnosis at all?
Well, we found out later on after they did the heart surgery, and I went through a whole lot of complications through that. It was later on, after recovering, going back to the oncologist, that the oncologist, the first time I'd seen him after my heart surgery, He said, I don't need to see you anymore. You're cured.
So my question is how did this make you feel? Like, about, because this is obviously what drew you away from God. Like, how'd you question that? Like, how did you take all this into consideration?
It was a daily battle.
Take your time. I mean, I'll take it over. I mean, I know, from when I've questioned God, it was always, if there's this omnibenevolent creator, if there's this all-loving God, why would he allow this to happen to people? Why does he allow sickness? Why is he, and you were misdiagnosed. I mean, there's people, you were talking to me earlier about people that you met that actually had these diseases.
Yes, people even much younger than me, children, I've seen suffering and literally on their deathbed.
So from going from just all that suffering you went through to not having, this faith to where you are now, like, can you confidently say now, like, for sure, like, your faith isn't questionable?
Yeah, I can confidently say my faith it's rock solid now. I met my maker. I've been to the other side back.
Wow. All right, Mark. Well, I'm anxious to get to the story of you crossing over. I kind of want to start prior to that. We just spoke about the leukemia and everything like that. Well, what happened? What happened in between these two things that basically led up to that point?
Well, I went in to have my aortic root, or my aortic valve replaced, and had the other one repaired. It was supposed to be a 4-hour procedure for the operation. I ended up ill for a little bit before they could operate. Got really sick one night, so I drove myself to ER. I didn't want to bother the wife because she had school the next morning. And I drove myself to ER, and I didn't realize how bad of shape I was actually in. By the time I arrived at ER, I was pretty sick.
Yeah.
They started me on some antibiotics and stuff, and it was about 3 days later that they was able to operate. During the operation, we don't know what happened, but we know the 4-hour operation ended up leading into about 14 hours on the OR table.
14 hours?
Yes.
Wow. So, I'm sure you got your family waiting for you.
Yes.
Like, what happened to you?
They said it was uneventful. They said there was no complications. However, my wife and family kept asking during the operation what was going on, why is it taking so long, and they was not provided any information.
Okay. And after the procedure?
After the procedure, I did okay for about the first 12 to 24 hours, and after that is when I took a turn for the worse. They was letting family come back and see me, and I couldn't remember my niece. I just thought she was a friend of the family at that point. And my sister and wife told the doctors that something was wrong. And they said, well, it's probably just anesthesia.
Right.
Give it some time, it'll wear off. And I progressively went downhill from there. I ended up going into organ failure. My kidney shut down, my heart started to fail, and went into liver failure as well.
Wow. And so what happened? What happened after they realized you were shutting down, basically?
I was really bad sick from going into liver failure. I don't know if you've ever seen anybody in liver failure or anything, but it makes you kind of loopy. I was flailing around, having a lot of issues. Had a really strong sensation that I was spinning, being spun, and I remember saying, "God damn it, make them stop spinning." And my family was telling me, "Nobody's spinning you. It's the liver failure that's making you feel like you're being spun. And later on after that, I sat up in the bed and I asked my wife of 22 years who she was. I didn't even know who she was anymore. And it just progressively got worse. They had to put me in a straitjacket at one point.
Just to stop you from moving? Just
to try and calm me down and keep me from moving around so much. Near that point is when they took my family aside and said that they needed to call the rest of the family in, and that I wasn't going to make it. They called my sister. She was down south at the time. She was on her way home, and the doctors at Genesis took my family into a side room, and they said, listen, he's not going to pull through this. If there's anything you want to say, you need to get it done. Sorry.
No, you're all right.
And thankfully, another doctor at Genesis, a higher up, told him, said, listen, whatever has happened here, we need to fix it. And he is the one that decided to call in life flight. Mm-hmm. But before they could airlift me, they needed to do emergency dialysis on me because I was basically filling up with poison. So they told the family, hey, this is what we're gonna do. They figured I was gonna die. I remember at one point I came to, and my leg was bothering me. I reached down and I thought they was cutting my leg off because I put my hand inside my leg because I had to get to the artery. And when they was doing the dialysis, they didn't bother to stitch me up or anything because they assumed I was gonna die.
I want you to walk me through what happened with Elena when Mark was going through what he was through the Genesis on his way to Henry Ford, or prior to.
Well, she wasn't at the hospital at first. I took her to my mom's, so she was at Grandma's house. And then when they said that they were going to do 6 hours of dialysis, I ran and got her so she could see her dad. So it was bad.
So describe kind of what happened when you went to get her, how you were feeling and whatnot.
Well, I got up to Grandma's apartment and walked in, and she just, what's wrong? Because I was
Right, but you guys didn't even know.
Fallen,
right?
Yeah.
Right. So when you got to the hospital, what happened? How long did it take for you to be able to even see him? Do you remember?
I don't even remember.
It probably about 20 minutes.
Yeah, because they were letting everybody go back to see him before he got lighted.
And can you describe the moment of you going in there?
No.
Yeah, you can.
Sorry.
I took her back there.
Yeah.
I can't.
You can try your best. It's okay. You can take your time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I went back there and I seen like all the tubes and stuff and like what was it called? Dialysis like stuff over him, and he wasn't like coherent, I don't think. And everybody was like gathered around him. And when I walked in and I seen it, I just like collapsed to the ground because I didn't think that I would see him like I did before the surgery. I thought that was it.
Right.
So I like collapsed in my cousin's arms and then they made me get out. Because his like blood pressure rose when I was in there because I was freaking out.
Yeah, so I was in the room holding his hand, and he was flailing like a fish out of water, and he only could sit up so far because they had him strapped down. And he looked at me and said, "Oh, hi, who are you?" I said, "I'm your wife, Melissa." He said, "Oh, okay," and then he was back out. And from then on, I just knew it was bad. There was something wrong, and they weren't giving me any answers. And then they took us, some of the family that was there, in a room and said that they were going to life flight him, and not even God could save him.
Wow. And so what were you doing during this time?
I was freaking out.
Yeah.
Like, that was my dad, you know?
It's alright.
I remember watching them running with him on the stretcher to the elevator. And then we ran outside after them because we had to get to our car. I was looking down and I could see the platform where the helicopter was, and I watched them load him up. And all I could think was that was the last time I was going to see him again. It was rough. I just looked up to the sky, I dropped to my knees, and I just prayed to God. I just prayed. That's all I knew what to do. That's what I was taught to do.
Alright, Mark, so if you could explain to us, what happened after the dialysis at Genesis.
After the dialysis was complete, I didn't remember much of the dialysis. I remember at one point I came to as I was being rushed out of the hospital, and when I realized they was putting me on a helicopter, I knew that was bad. My mom always said, a person's in bad shape if they've called a helicopter for them. Ironically, 2 weeks prior to this, I had told my wife we was out on the deck and a helicopter was flying over, and I told her I was going to fly in a helicopter soon. And here I was getting loaded in the back of it. I remember the medic putting a helmet on me, said it's going to get really noisy. I remember the lift off and how the vibration, I thought the helicopter was going to come apart because it was shaking so bad. I went back out. During the flight, I come to briefly, and I sat up and I asked the flight medic, I said, "Am I going to live?" And he said, "You've got to want to live. You've got to want to fight." And I went back out. Before we landed, I come back to again, and I asked the medic, I said, "Hey, are we going to fucking Disneyland?"
Yeah.
And he says, "We're taking you wherever it is you think you need to be." Well, at that point, I guess I thought I needed to be at Disneyland because it was pretty bad. Yeah, it wasn't until about a year later that I was able to go back and meet the flight crew that flew me to Henry Ford, and thank them for everything they did. And I was able to talk to the flight medic, and I asked him, I said, "Hey, because I know I was in bad shape."
Yeah.
And they were shocked that I was there. They didn't think I'd make it. They thought, I died.
Yeah.
That's how bad it was. And I asked the medic, I said, "I want to ask you a few questions because this is how I remember it. I sat up and asked you if I was going to live, and you told me you've got to want to live, you've got to fight." And I said, I went back out, and he started shaking his head no. And I said, "No, at one point I asked you if we was going to Disneyland, if we was going to fucking Disneyland," and he chuckled. He says, "No, you were pretty much gone."
The whole flight.
Yep, the whole flight. It was an 18-minute flight. He said they worked on me the entire flight. Had me on almost every drug on board, trying to keep me alive.
Wow.
I was gone.
Wow.
Yeah. After that, I don't remember much anything until I woke up and had my wife and one of the nurses saying, "Oh my God, he's opened his eyes." I'm like, why are they making a big deal out of this?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I didn't realize everything that had happened.
Right. And you were given 5 days to live.
Yeah, they told my wife and kids that they'd give me 5 days of being in the coma at Henry Ford, and they was, gonna unhook me from my life support. And I was literally down 2 hours before they was to come in and unhook me from my life support when I opened my eyes.
Just started fluttering his eyes, and I just started hollering, "Rose, Rose, he's opening up his eyes, he's opening up his eyes."
Yeah.
And every day when Rose would walk in there, she'd always say, "Ma, are you gonna wake up today?"
Yeah.
That's crazy. Maybe died, like, went to this other place. How did you ever think for a second maybe you were just going crazy or you were just over medicated? Like,
Yeah, it crossed my mind a few times. However, we'd be out in public. We went to Kroger to grocery shop after I was able to get up and around. And we was walking through Kroger's, and this woman at the end of the aisle, she had 2 of her grandkids with her. And from the end of the aisle, as she walked closer, the look in her eyes and the expression on her face, I didn't know what to think. The way she was looking at me was like, her mouth was even open in awe. And I looked at my wife, I said, "Oh my God, what is this woman's problem?" She's like, "I don't know, keep walking." And as she got closer, she let go of her kids, and she asked me, she goes, "Please, can I put my hands upon you?" I looked at Melissa again, I'm like, what do I say to that? How do you respond to somebody, a stranger in a store? How do you respond to that? And she said, "No, please, I want to lay my hands upon your face." And at that point, I just wanted to go and get my shopping done and get out of the store. And so I agreed. I said, "Well, yeah." And she was trembling. Her hands were shaking. And she said, "Oh my God," as she touched my face, she said, "You've been there." And I'm thinking, what is wrong with this woman? Her hands shaking, she reached down, she pulled her grandkids in closer. As she looked down at them, she said, "This man has been at the feet of Jesus." How on earth could that woman have ever known? I've never met her, never seen her.
No idea who she is.
And she was in awe. She told her grandkids, "This man has been at the feet of Jesus."
and that wasn't the only time.
No, it's happened probably 3-4 different times after that. Again, we was shopping, same thing. Woman was by herself at that point. It was a different woman. At the end of the aisle, as she got closer, she's like, "Oh my God." I'm like, "What?" She's like, you've crossed over before and you've come back." I looked at my wife like, what is...
Right,
how does people know or feel, or how do you see that?
Right.
And I'd write it off like, hey, maybe just a few people, whatever. We went to a couple months or a year down the road, we attended a new church. We were sitting in the back of the church, didn't know anybody there, didn't know anyway.
Yeah.
And
You just decided to go to this church?
because we like to go to different churches and check out things. And we all sat in the back, and he was preaching about, people that have died or whatnot and might have come back. Honestly, I was bored with the sermon and the way it was going. I was on my phone. It was very disrespectful for me to do that. I understand, and I know that. And he said, "There's a man here. I'm getting a feeling that there's a man or somebody in our church that has died and he's came back. And like I said, I was on my phone, wasn't paying attention, and I felt my wife Melissa, she kept going like this, nudging my side, and I'm like, what? And she says, he's talking to you. No, he's not. And he's like, sir, in the back. Okay, well that's a little, because that's where we were. We was in the exact back. And I looked up, he said, yes, you. He said, stand up. I looked at her, I'm like, I don't like to be singled out at all.
Right.
I like to just be in the background, whatever. He said, in fact, have everybody back there that's with you stand up. So we stood up and he says, I'm getting strong feelings. Something happened. I feel you've died and have been in heaven. He goes, and I know this might sound funny to you, but you've died and you've come back. I about lost it. I didn't know what to think.
Right.
Because here this guy, never met the guy before. He's telling me I've died and come back. And that was just confirming what I already felt and what I already kind of knew. He said, I want that whole back row to come to the front of the church. So we all got up and walked to the front of the church, and one by one, he went to each one of us, and it was amazing. He said, God has got a plan for you. That's why he kept you here. He brought you back. He wanted you here. And there's a reason for it. How this guy knew is beyond me.
Wow.
But it was God. God was telling him, hey, listen, this guy, he's been here and he's back.
Yeah.
So there's a message that I'm supposed to convey.
And you think you figured it out yet?
Or you're talking about it.
Yeah, we are. Now, my question for you is, do you think, maybe I've been thinking about this, when you went into that coma, do you think, besides the helicopter ride, do you think maybe that time during your comatose state that you went to the other side that too?
I know I was there.
And this is just a question, and if you don't mind, what was it like?
For me to put into words what heaven is compared to here, it's almost impossible. There's nothing on earth that compares to being there. It's pure love. There's no human emotion. There's no sadness, hatred. All that is just gone. Is all you feel is warmth, love, and peace. You know that there's loved ones here on earth that you'd left behind, but you don't feel you miss them because in heaven everything is connected.
Yeah, but now earlier you said something about, God brought you back and whatnot. But do you think maybe there was a little bit of a decision on your part?
Yeah, I was given a choice. To stay or come back at one point. And you see, when you're given a choice, you see replays of parts of your life. And mine was my family.
Yeah. I'm sure, if heaven is as great as you say it is, and I'm sure it is, it's like, that must have been hard. Just, like, it's crazy. It's crazy what you give up for your family, I think.
Yes. And after healing and knowing where I was and going through the daily life of being here, you do suffer. I was angry.
Yeah.
I was depressed. I became depressed, knowing what I left. I mean, heaven is peaceful, all love. Then you come back here and you realize that you've got a long road of recovery and a lot of fight left.
Now, after telling your story and hoping that the viewers out there are touched or inspired by your story, is there anything that you would like them to know? Any advice or?
Yeah, sure. Don't take life for granted. Live every day that you're here as well as you can, and try to inspire others.
All right. Is that it? Anything you guys would like to say? All right, guys. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, inspired or moved, like and share it. Thank you.